get my six. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the planet. It typically has nothing to do with homesteading whatsoever. Homesteading off the grid. So what is it that I want for Christmas? I got it last night. It's an ongoing gift, and I got I have a friend. He's no longer with us. He passed on years ago, but he used to call these things God shots. I got a little God shot last night, and I use the word little, but it's really something big. And I'm going to share with you this evening, as I make this video, what that God shot was. It was a huge gift, a huge Christmas gift. My family and I went to Busch Gardens. Here's my souvenir. You ever heard of Christmastown at Busch Gardens? We go there in October. They have the amusement park. This is down in Williamsburg, Virginia. And at Halloween or October, they do this thing called Hallow Scream, and the entire amusement park is Halloween themed. And they have hundreds, if not thousands, of actors come in. They dress up in costumes and they chase you with chainsaws, and they have the most amazing live performances you'll ever see. They play eerie music, and all of the roller coasters and what is just typical amusement park entertainment rides and experiences throughout the rest of the year, they turn into like haunted houses. It's an awesome time. Well, at Christmas, they do the same thing, but it's Christmas themed, and they call it Christmastown. They have over 10 million Christmas lights throughout the amusement park. They have shows, Christmas themed shows. You hear Christmas music everywhere. And this was our first year to actually go down to the Christmastown event. And oh my gosh, we're definitely putting that on the list of things to do every year after that. Let me share just a few random pictures with you right now that my wife took last night. Here's me, my beautiful bride Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, and our son Daniel. Just half a dozen pictures. They'll last a second or two, but have a look. All right, so glad I could show you some images of the fun we had. Hopefully you felt like you were there a little bit. So Christmas is upon us. As of this recording, it's just a few days away, and I want to share something with you. This is my Christmas gift from last year. This is the little string that we use to keep it tied into the sheath. This was given to me. Actually, it was given to Daniel by way of me. From my Filipino grandfather. We call him Lolo. Daniel is the 10th generation member of the family to possess this. Our Lolo's great grandfather was a Spanish conquistador. As you might not know this, but the Filipino side of our family, my wife and her side, from the Philippines, clearly. The Philippines were occupied by Spain for 433 years, which is an ironic number because that's my best mile time. Back when I was a miler, competitive middle distance runner. Lolo traces his roots back to a pure Spaniard who was one of the soldiers in charge of occupying the Philippines, fell in love with the beautiful Filipino lady, like I have done myself, and they got together, and that's where the bloodline of the family started. Well, kind of, sort of. But this used to be the bayonet on the end of his rifle, flintlock rifle. This dates back to the 1840s, as far as we know. The handle's not original, but the blade is. It's pure bronze. So I was very humbled and honored when Lolo gave me this last Christmas as a Christmas gift. He wanted it to stay in the family. We took what the necessary measures to get it to the U.S. legally. It's a family heirloom. Honored to have it. And as far as Lolo goes, I made a video about a week or 10 days ago asking you for prayers because Lolo's not been well. Thank you for the prayers that you've sent. Lolo is still in the hospital, and I'm just going to be blunt. He's probably not coming out of it. He's 88 years old. He's already lived more than 20 years longer than the average life expectancy for a Filipino man in the Philippines. He's lived a very healthy life. In his early 20s, he realized that drinking and drugging and smoking cigarettes or using tobacco in any form wasn't good, so he just stopped. And he worked hard his whole life. He was a construction worker, worked his way up to a foreman, then an engineer. There's a beautiful part of the capital city in Manila named Makati City. That's where the rich people live. It's where the Filipino Stock Exchange is. Our Lolo designed and had built a large percentage of the beautiful buildings in that part of the country, in that part of the city. So he's had a long, successful life. He's comfortable right now, and he's surrounded with the adult children from his first marriage and his second marriage, which was to our Lola. He married our Lola when my wife's father was still a kid, so he's been in the picture for 40 plus years. And he's surrounded by his grandchildren and some of his great-grandchildren. But his lungs are filling up with fluid. He's got some other issues. Random parts of his body will just swell. He's 88, and things are starting to shut down, malfunction. We would appreciate your continued prayers. He's comfortable, and the family has kind of accepted that we've accepted the current circumstances, and I'll leave it at that. And I'm very grateful that last Christmas, me, my beautiful bride dearly, and our wonderful son Daniel were able to be over there in the Philippines for Christmas, because we got to spend last Christmas with Lolo and Lola. And at one point, I think we had 40 or 50 of our family members there for both Christmas and New Year's. People came in from all over the country to Lolo and Lola's house to celebrate with us. We had pig roasts, we had parties. It was a great time. And it was, the thing I love most about Filipino culture is that the number one most important aspect of their world is family. And I think once upon a time it used to be here in the U.S., but it still is over there, and it still is in this household, and it still is in the households that we spend our time with as far as friends go. We have a very small group of friends, and it's by design, because we only align ourselves with people who share the same priorities as us, and family is at the top of that list. So with that said, another reason it was important for us to be in the Philippines last year, and we spent 5 months. We went over in October and we came back in March. Listen, I know a lot of you folks who watch this channel are very similar to me in lifestyle, beliefs, priorities. Many of you are, and this is just a term that's used in the financial planning world, and I know this because I was a financial planner for 8 years. Many of you are what we call first generation. And by that, the term means the first generation really, for example, in my family, going back forever, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I was the first person in my family to kind of leave a very repressed area in Appalachia where there truly was no opportunity to go to a more prosperous area because I wanted something better for myself and for anybody that would come after me. Yeah, we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit for having done what we did to get here, but once we get here, we have a new set of challenges. And I've had multiple conversations with multiple first-generation fathers about this. One of the traps a lot of first-generation folks fall into is consumerism and materialism. A lot of it's because, and I fight this temptation myself, and there's time, like there are things I would like to have. There's some material objects I would like to have. I could go out right now today. I could go online and push a button and purchase them and pay cash in full and have them delivered to my house within 48 hours. Because if I just don't want to go pick them up, and some of these things are quite pricey. For example, one of the things I've fought the urge to do this with for the last couple of years is a UTV. I would like to have a UTV just to ride around on my property, haul wood, etc. But I think it through, because here's the reason why. For me to get a quality UTV, because you get what you pay for, and I've learned that lesson by trying to save a buck or two on other products only to get what I pay for. So I'd have to spend $15,000 or $20,000 to get a quality UTV. Do I have it to spend? Sure. Could I do it? Yes. But the reason I don't is because being first generation, and especially through my experiences of having been down and out in the third world, like in the Philippines, I was stuck over there 4.5 years on an expired visa. There were times we had no food. I know what it's like to go through the jungle and dig up roots and other edibles, and that's all I will say about that, because I was hungry and I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. I don't want to go back to that. So when I look at, say, pulling 20 grand out of wherever it is to buy something that goes down in value and basically doesn't do anything for me that my pickup truck can't already do, or my little mini bike that I really enjoy riding, or even my zero-turn lawnmower can't do, I have a hard time. I just can't do it, because where that money is positioned now, it pays me dividends. And I know UTV not only is not going to pay me dividends, but it's going to go down in value every day. It's a depreciating asset. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you just finance it out for 5 years? If your credit good? Yeah, my credit's excellent. So you could get it for very low interest. But again, I would be paying interest on a depreciating asset, whereas that cash is currently positioned in such a manner that it's paying me. So I just can't bring myself to do it. But I wrestle with that. And at times I have done stupid things with money because of my emotions rather than my logic. So that's the challenge that a lot of first generation folks make or we face. So then bring children into the picture, especially as men bringing sons into the picture. There's always the temptation to make sure that our sons have all the things that maybe we never did. I get that, but it's more important to me that my son knows or learns or understands or comprehends a lot of aspects to life that I didn't know that I wish I had, because a lot of bad decisions I made was simply because I wasn't in possession of the knowledge or the entirety of the knowledge I needed to make the proper decision in those situations. So my focus is more of that, and I am benefited in that I was a professional financial planner for 8 years, so I am able to teach my son about finances and money in ways that some people who, like 97% of the human population, just simply doesn't understand it. I don't care if they're 6 or if they're 60. It's not taught in schools, and that's another reason the last couple of years it was more important for us to homeschool our son than it was to send him to the public school, especially with a bunch of the idiocracies they've had going on there the last 4 years, which will cease to remain come January, and we're heavily leaning towards sending him back to public school next year. He wants to play football with his buddies that he's gotten to know through sports and all that. Dividends, understanding how money works and finances and how to save for your future and all these things, they were just more important to us than pronouns. And so we homeschooled him. And also, I mean, yeah, you can open up a world cultures textbook and put your nose in it all day long and you're not going to know squat. So it was more important to take our son overseas, take him, to the Philippines predominantly, but other places in Asia. And we're planning a trip to South America this spring, and we're going to travel up throughout Europe very soon. We want him to learn about world cultures by actually going around the world and seeing it and having the experiences within different cultures that he would never have by having his nose in a textbook. Basically, we don't want him to become an educated fool. And I live in a college town. There's plenty of them around here. There's people with very advanced degrees from very wonderful, brand name universities who the problem's not what they know. It's just that so much of what they think they know just ain't so. And I don't want our son to grow up that way. So anyway, here's a dilemma that a lot of us first generation folks face in that regard. We can give our children stuff, and we can talk about what we did to get into the position we're in to be able to give them that stuff. But if they weren't there to see the work we did, they really can't appreciate it. And if they didn't do any of the work themselves, they definitely can't appreciate it. And if they just receive stuff because we decide to give it to them, they really, in the grand scheme of things, don't appreciate it. Like the old saying says, they know the cost of everything, perhaps, but the value of nothing. There's no gratitude because there was nothing on their end done to earn whatever it is we give. And where there is no gratitude, you have entitlement. Okay? We hear about entitlement, and we often think about, oh, those welfare bums, those lower socioeconomic status folks who thinks that the welfare system should just give them more. The big taxpayers like myself should just... Listen, I came up with this. I've said it before. It's been a while. I'm going to say it again. When it comes to entitlement mentality and a lack of gratitude, privilege is just as destructive as lack. Because let me tell you, I grew up in a repressed area where most of the people were poor. I currently live in a very affluent area where a good many of the people are rich. And this idea of, well, I just deserve these things because I exist is equal among both. When you have kids that are raised with everything, and they never had to work to earn any of it, they don't do chores around the house, they don't, they're not encouraged to get a part-time job when they're teenagers, or maybe to work part-time when they're being put through college with grandma's money or trust fund baby money. You create a sense of entitlement. The attitude is, well, I exist, so of course, why wouldn't I just have these things? I've always had these things. Well, when you've been in my position where you've had absolutely nothing, and let me tell you, when I was down and out in the Philippines, I had somebody ask me once, they said, well, why didn't you just get on welfare? I laughed so hard. We were catfishing. I almost fell in the river. Number one, they don't have it. Number two, our government wouldn't give me any of those benefits if I was overseas applying for them. Number three, that's just not how I roll. If it is to be, it's up to me. I've always had that mentality, so I was able to remedy that situation I was in myself. Now, it took a while, but I was able to do it. It's like, and that's sort of it's wonderful that in our society, there's a place where people who are destitute can go to get help. That is wonderful. But once you leave the comforts of Western society, especially U.S. society, Canada, some European nations that have these big social programs, it just ain't there. And if you can't figure out a way to feed yourself and your family, you and your family will starve. That's just how it is. And that's the situation I was in. Okay. So I brought my son here. We were able to come here, my wife and our son, and I wanted him to have opportunities I never had, really, more than anything. And he's getting so many of those now. But what we started to see was that because he was surrounded by affluence and because he was surrounded by entitlement, it started to rub off. And he had individuals that he called friends who would tell him, oh, wow, you need this or you need that. And he got in a position where he started asking for things that he didn't even necessarily want. But it's like he was feeling peer pressured into having these things because certain kids were telling them that if he didn't have these things, well, then he just must be poor. He said it didn't bother him, but clearly it did. And so I thought to myself, how do we fix this? Because we don't want to create monsters. As first generation folks who have worked very hard to get to where we are and wanting to pass on knowledge and work ethic and gratitude to the next generation, we've got to make sure that we don't overindulge with stuff and create monsters. Like a recent email I received from a parent of a child I coached a million years ago over in the Pacific Northwest. We don't want to create the same privileged little, he used, a word that starts with P. I'll say person, that he didn't use that word, that we detested ourselves because these were the kids that picked on us when we were growing up as underprivileged children. And I saw that my son was dealing with that, and I didn't want him to become that. So we thought, not only has it been several years since we've been in the Philippines, not only do we want to spend time with our Filipino family, and again, we're so grateful because, realistically speaking, it was the last Christmas we'll have with Lola and Lolo. Lolo is 88, Lola is 89. They have a beautiful love story. The reason both of them have hung on for so long is because they are so madly in love. Neither of them wants to die before the other because they can't imagine spending one day on earth without the other. And that is an honest story. And their love has kept both of them, their love for each other has kept both of them alive for 20 years longer than they should have lived. As of this recording, Christmas is 5 days away. We don't know if Lolo will be here this Christmas. So again, prayers, well wishes, you send them our way for our Filipino Lolo. We are grateful for that. But we took our son over there so he could be reminded what it's like to have nothing of material value, but to have everything that matters, and that's family. And I can talk forever. My buddy Heath over at Heath's house, by the way, thanks for going over there to support his channel, those of you who have gone over and subscribed so far. He'll tell you he knows me well. I can talk forever. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit longer about some of the benefits we got from that trip and a gift I got last night from my son. The lesson took, and I saw it again last night at Busch Gardens. So just a couple quick stories. We go over there, and we got there in October. And so before it was even Christmas, we were at one of Lolo and Lolo's houses. They had two houses. They have one in the city where a couple of their grandchildren, their adult grandchildren, they're my wife's age, early or mid 30s, and their children live. But Lolo and Lolo predominantly live out in what they call the provinces. We would call it the country, or you could call it the jungle. It's 6 hours away from the city. They live in a little hut with a dirt floor. And let me tell you, their house in the city is not much better. It's on stilts because of the flooding. I mean, they're at sea level. It's an island nation. Pollution's a problem. People have a tendency to just throw their garbage down. If they go into a convenience store and they come out with a candy bar, they'll take the wrapper off and throw it on the street and eat the candy bar. Not all, but so many that it creates a problem. Because when it rains, all this garbage goes into the drainage system, so the water can't drain because it's backed up with garbage, and so everything floods. When there's a heavy rain that lasts longer than 10 or 15 minutes, they'll have flash flooding. People will get killed. Their shacks will get washed away. It's terrible. So Lola and Lolo's house in the city is up on stilts. In their late 80s, they basically have to climb up a ladder to get up to the livable part of the house, which up there again is just one room living, sectioned off with curtains for a couple of bedrooms. And the lumber boards, you walk on them and they sag down as you walk. You feel like you're walking on a wooden hammock. But what we'll call a restroom is down in the bottom. It's a dirt floor and it's a hole. And there's a dog tied up about 5 feet away from this hole that will bark at you incessantly while you're taking care of business in the bathroom. And if that dog wasn't there, a number of the local friendly neighbors would come in at some night, or if nobody was home, and take whatever there was there to be taken. I mean, that's just life there. So one night we were at Lolo and Lola's city house seeing the cousins. Lolo and Lolo were still back in the province, and Daniel and I had to use the restroom. So we crawled down the ladder. It was about midnight, and we're there. Daniel's doing his business, paying the water bill, as it were, in the hole. The dog's barking incessantly. We had been in country, Philippines, for about 2 months. And Daniel looks over at me, and he says, "Dad?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I get it." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I feel privileged now." I said, "Okay." I said, "Good." I said, "You ready to go home?" He goes, "No, I'm having a good time with the family, and I want to stay longer, but I get it. I see why you wanted," because I talked to him. He started saying some things, sounded entitled, and I kept saying, remember where you come from, remember where you come from. Well, he was forgetting. He grew up, he spent the first 5 years of his life over there, but then he had spent the next 6 or 7 over here. He needed a reminder. So our trip over there last winter was as much of a reminder for my son of where he came from and where I was for a while and where his mother came from, as much as it was to spend time with family. Now, another quick story about that trip before I get to the story about last night. When we did have our Christmas party there on Christmas, Dearly and I made sure that we bought a gift for all the kids that would be there, all of our nieces and nephews. It was like 20-some children under the age of 18. And we wrapped them up in Christmas wrapping. And that's not common over there. That's not part of the culture. What's common over there is on Christmas Eve, everybody stays up till midnight. They have a big feast. Typically, if you can afford it, they roast a pig. We could afford it. We were there treating. It was our pleasure and our honor to treat. And at midnight, it's like New Year's here in the U.S. You celebrate, you party, you play music, you dance. And all night you play games. And people will start going off to bed after midnight. But the concept of opening gifts and exchanging gifts, that's just not part of the culture. And largely, yes, because they are a very poor populace. But it was never part of the culture. It was always about family, food, festivities. We play games all night. I had more fun last year at Christmas. I'm 51 this year. I've never had a Christmas as enjoyable as last Christmas in the Philippines, okay? So we had some friends that lived across the road right on the beachfront from Dearly's sister, Che, and we invited them to come to the party. Well, they brought 2 of their 8 children, so they had 2 little boys there. One was 8 and one was 12. And we had neglected to get them a gift because we never expected them to come to the party. So at midnight, that's when we passed out the gifts to the children. And Daniel had a couple of things. Most of the kids, they got like 2 small things so they could unwrap 2 presents. Well, the kids were unwrapping the gifts and we were watching them get excited, but honestly, it lasted about 30 seconds or a minute. And they all got something that they liked and they were grateful, but then they jumped back into the games with their cousins and because that's what was important to them most. So me and Dearly and Daniel were there, and we saw these 2 little boys over there, and I was like, oh, snap. We didn't get them anything because we didn't really expect them to come. Daniel was like, don't worry, Dad, I got this. Daniel took his 2 gifts, went over to those little boys and says, here. Because we didn't write his name on them. There weren't any, when we wrote the other kids' names on theirs, but we didn't write his on his because we knew those were for him. He gave away his Christmas gifts to these 2 kids because he didn't want them to be the only children at this party where the other 20 plus children got gifts and they didn't. That was one of my proudest moments as a father ever in life. I was more proud in that moment than when my son, this past football season, he talked about it during our conversation we had to introduce his channel the other night. And if you missed that video, I'm going to put it at the end of this one. Please go watch it, like it, and subscribe to my man Heath's channel while you're there. He's a good friend of mine. He's one of our football coaches. He was the defensive coordinator. I was more proud of my son in that moment when he gave away his 2 Christmas gifts to the 2 little boys that didn't get anything than I was in any game we ever won, in which he had one game he threw 3 touchdown passes. We blanked a team 32-0. I was more proud that Christmas than I was during that game, okay? So I had another proud papa moment last night. I'm going on half an hour here. I don't want to keep you. It is Christmas season. Y'all are busy with your families. So we're at Busch Gardens last night. I saw the best live performance, the best performance period ever of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens ever. It was a 30-minute play about Ebenezer Scrooge. It was a musical. It was amazing. The lights were incredible. We did ride at least one ride. We rode the teacups. That's always been Daniel's favorite since we first came here and he was a little boy. So every time we go there, he's looking for the teacups. Hates roller coasters, loves the teacups. It's where you sit on them and you spin. And so we had dinner at one of the meal halls, and you get your food and then you go sit, and we were treated to a live performance of 3 men who had the voices of angels who were harmonizing Christmas carols while we sat there and ate and watched and listened. It was a wonderful time. So we go into this chow hall, I'll call it, former military guy here, and we're getting our food. There's about 20 people in there in line. They had like 5 different sections. They had, Italian food here, Asian food over here, a salad bar here, a pizza and sub bar here. So you get a tray like you're in a cafeteria. You go through, you pick what you want, then you pay, then you go sit and you listen to the music and you enjoy your meal. So while we're there, and we had to go to the restroom. It was cold, and I have this thing when I'm shivering like this, it makes me have to pay the water bill a little more frequently than usual. Daniel had to go as well. So we're in line, and Dearly's off looking to see what kind of food she wants to eat. And so I said to Daniel, I said, let's pick what food we want. We'll go ahead and order, and I'll get it, and I'll put it on our tray. Then you go ahead and use the restroom, and then after I pay and bring the food to the table, I'll go to the restroom. He's like, okay. So we're there in line, we're picking our food, and this employee comes in. He's a young man, early 20s. William and Mary College is down there, and I think a lot of college students work at Busch Gardens. And so he's pushing this cart. It's like one of those industrial cafeteria carts that holds trays. And it was 4 rows deep, and each row had about 100 trays on it. So this guy's coming through, he's pushing 400 trays because these people are selling food like crazy. The trays were still wet because they have to make sure to get them out there so there's enough trays to keep the chow line going. And the guy's starting to put the trays where they go, and something slipped, and all 400 trays just shattered to the floor. Now, they didn't break. They were hard plastic, but you hear this big crash. Everybody turns around, and here's this young man in like 21. He's now looking at picking up 400 trays. And everybody's looking, and I'm observing everybody else because I'm hyper vigilant. I always observe my surroundings. Everybody, 90% of the people just turn back around and start ordering. The other 10% chuckle, laugh, maybe chide the guy. A couple a-holes clap, and then they turn around and they're looking at their food. So we order our food, and Daniel says, "Okay, Dad, I'll be back in a minute." I'm like, "Okay." So he takes off, and I'm thinking, well, he's going to the restroom, right? Like I thought. But it occurred to me after a couple of minutes, it's taking him a little bit longer because the restroom was right there. And so I turn around to look for him, and I see my son on his knees helping this employee pick up all those trays. Daniel was going around making stacks of 15 or 20 trays, picking them up, and then he'd take them over, and the guy would take them from him and walk them the rest of the way across the cafeteria to stick them into the thing. By the time the guy turned around and went back, my son had another 15 or 20 trays. Daniel did that until he had helped that young man pick up all 400 of those trays that had fallen. Then he ran to the bathroom because he really had to go by them. And then we met at the table. It was my turn to go to the bathroom. He said, "Hey, Dad, sorry that took longer. I know you really got to go, but I wanted to help that guy pick up those trays." I said, "Buddy, you got nothing to apologize for." And I almost cried as I went to the bathroom for my turn. That was a God shot. That was a confirmation that lesson last year when we went to where he's from, having to eat roots and grubs at times because it's the only thing we had to eat. That was confirmation that lesson took. He remembered where he came from. He's ditched the entitlement, "I exist, therefore I'm worthy" attitude that he was picking up from a lot of the privileged little people he's surrounded by here. That was my Christmas gift. It's not about this cup. We talked about, on the way home today from Williamsburg, what was your favorite part about Christmastown? Dearly said this. Daniel said that. My absolute most favorite part of Christmastown was when I saw my son drop to his knees to help a young man pick up 400 trays that he had dropped when he didn't have to do it and when no one else did. Again, go over to my buddy's new channel, Heath's House, like and subscribe. I want that for Christmas as well. I want you to help me support another wonderful father who's raised 2 adult men so far and working on raising 3 young men who will become men. He's raising those kids not to become adult boys. There is a difference. He's raised men. His 2 that are grown are active Army, currently serving. One's deployed somewhere in Europe. I won't say where. Thanks for spending some time with me here, folks. Hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season. I'll see you for more next time from the greatest channel that has nothing, the greatest homesteading channel that has nothing to do with homesteading, but a heck of a lot to do about life. Homesteading Off the Grid. See you next time.